Welcome to the bonus workshop for session 12. This was for me, the concepts in this session were just changed my whole way of guitar playing. Let's look at what we learned in this session. We learned about 2 chords, major 7th chords, minor 11th chords, and chord substitution. Don't let all those fancy chord names freak you out. It's a lot of great stuff in this session. Now, the most important skills I need for you to come away from this session are to have memorized these new chord forms. We're going to give you quite a few of them to go through. Also, the physicalness of playing these chords quickly. Also, understanding major to major 2 chord, that substitution, and then the minor version of that, the minor to minor 11th chord substitution that we talked about. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we want to do is review these open 2 chord forms. These new forms are adding a couple of new color tones to some of the chords that we have already learned previously. We'll learn more about the theory of all this in the coming couple of sessions. But for now, let's see if we can get these new chords underneath our fingers. Pretty much every guitar player can play G, C, and D. Now we're kind of taking you beyond that to really give your chord playing a new, fresh flair in your chord playing. Okay, so we're going to start out with a C2. We have our 3rd finger on the 5th string. 5-string chord. Don't play that last 6th string. That's one way to play it. Actually, the more common way is the 2, 1, and 3, like that. So if you play it like this, it's easy to relate to that C function there. A lot of times an easier way to grab is this C2. It's easier to go to a G chord from that. C2. What about a D2? Here's a D. We're just taking off our 2nd finger. We end up with this pretty open-sounding D2. Let's go to E2. Okay, this is the one that everybody groans at. Here's your E. I'm going to stretch my pinky out to get that E, to get that 2nd, that F sharp in there. Here's E. Here's that E2. Now, again, it takes a while to get your hands to limber up and to stretch this far. Let's do remember our stretching exercise from all these sessions back? Get our hands warmed up for all this stuff we're about to play. Let's try that E2 again. Now, although this may be a huge stretch for you, the more you do it, the easier that will become. Next is a G2. Now look what happens here. We have our 2nd finger on this low G. Then I have an X on that 5th string. Well, how can you play a chord and have a muted note right in the middle of it? Well, remember my 2nd finger here, his little rear end is going to sit on that 5th string. So actually, this note is in there. Just when they're all put together, you don't hear it. Last one is an A2. This is an easy one, very characteristic on guitar. So those are your open 2 chords that we're going to focus on right now. We're going to be working through the bonus workshop exercises for session 12. These and many other resources are available to you on our website again at learnandmasterguitar.com/resources. Bunch of stuff there. Take advantage of all that stuff. Take advantage of the discussion board and all the good information and encouragement and support that's available there. Okay, the first of these bonus exercises we're going to look at for this session is the 2 chord bonus exercises. Let's start with number 1. Take a look at those rhythms. We're back to strumming. I kind of wanted to incorporate a bunch of things that we've learned so far. So let's look at number 1. What's that pattern? Down, down, up, down. Here we go. 1, 2, and play. Take that 2nd finger off to get that D2. And D sus. D2. See how that works? It's just another one in our D family. D, D2, D sus. Good. Okay, let's try number 2 now. This one starts on a G2. Here we go. 1 and 2 and ready, go. E minor 7th, C2, D2, and a G2. Let's try that one more time. A little bit slower. Let's slow it down a little bit. 1 and 2 and ready, go. E minor 7th, C2, get those fingers right, D2, G2. Very good. Take a look at number 3. This one gets us a little practice on the A and the A2. Look, what's that rhythm? Down, up, down, up, up, down. Also in the third measure, you'll notice the E sus is resolving to the E on an up stroke, so don't let that throw you. Let's play this pretty slow here. 1 and 2 and play. D2, E sus to resolve to E. Let's do it again. D2, E sus, resolve, A2. Very good. And those are those first 3. Let me talk to you about the movable 2-chord forms now. We've looked at some of the open versions of these 2 chords. Let's take a look at some of the movable versions that I showed you. I showed you one that pivots off of the 4th string. This means that pivot note, the diamonded note, is on the 4th string. That's what this first one starts with. That B2 starts on the 5th string. The G2 is based off of the 6th string, so I gave you one for all 3 lower strings. Let's start with that F2, 4th string first. You're up here at the 3rd fret. I've got a little bar happening. Push those fingers down real hard. Let's play it together. Ready, go. And all together. Next one, well, before we go to the next one, let's jump it around different keys. What would be an E flat 2? Well, my pivot note is on my finger there, first finger. Move that down to E flat, right? F, E, E flat. And suddenly I have an E flat 2. So you get all 12 keys with one chord form. That's the beauty of these barred and these movable chords. What if I wanted a G2? Where would that be? Well, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G. And there's a G2. Now let's look at the 5th string form, the B2 chord. Kind of like a B minor 7th, just take off your 2nd finger. And again, I can move him to different spots. There's a B flat 2. What if I wanted a D2? D2 up there. Let's look at the 6th string version. This is this movable G2 chord. Remember, here's my pivot note right there on that 2nd finger on that 3rd fret, 6th string. This one has a real growly sound to it. Kind of gives a real open, growly sound. Okay, now go back to your 2-chord bonus exercises, and we're going to continue on. We're going to look at number 4. These next few exercises are using a fingerstyle pattern. Thumb 2, 1, 3. Remember how we talked about that a couple sessions back? Thumb 2, 1, 3. That's going to be the pattern for these. Let's go real slow. 1 and 2 and number 4, F2, go. Next measure. Quarter note here, then I go to a B flat 2. Quarter note, C2. Then back to F2. Next measure. Here's that quarter note. B flat 2. C2, the barred version. Let's go a little bit faster. See how that works? Starts to make music after we get it fast enough. Number 5, take a look at this one. Starts on that E2. Now I just put slashes there, so you can use whatever fingerstyle rhythm you want to on these, because sometimes you'll be able to, you won't always have it spelled out for you. E2, A2, and B2 are these 2 chords. These 3 chords in this song. 1, 2, and go. A2, B2, B2, good. Now let's take a look at number 6. Use that open G2 at the bottom there. Look at that rhythm. Thumb, 1, 2, 3 is our pattern. Thumb, 1, 2, 3. Nice and slow. 1 and 2 and go. C2, F2, G2. Now that F2, that one you're just going to have to follow the notes on that one. It's just an open version of this. If I go down far enough, I eventually get off the neck and I have that open G there. Here we go. Number 6 one more time. 1 and 2 and a little bit faster. Go. C2, F2, G2. One more time, a little bit faster. C2, F2, G2. One more time, faster. There you go. Now let's talk about the major 7th chords that we learned. We learned some open forms first. Now the major 7th chords have a sweet sounding function when we substitute them in. They're good for jazz. You hear them all the time in jazz. All that sweet sound. Let's start out with the C major 7th. Couldn't be easier. It's like a C chord without your first finger. Then we have a D major 7th, a little mini bar here over 3 strings with your first finger on that 2nd fret. Make sure you get all 3 of them clearly. F major 7th, that open E string there at the end. G major 7th, all 6 strings. Look at this, only 2 fingers. And again, we're muting that 5th string. And A major 7th, 5-string chord. And those are open major 7th forms. These are the first, when we get into these movable chords, these are the first movable chords we've looked at that are based off of the 4th string. So let's take a look at that. E flat major 7th. And now I have a major 7th form that's movable. First finger here, all these are barred. Now let me just let you in on a little secret here. Here was a D major 7th. If I just think with me, just think. If I move everything up a half step, this would turn into this. These would go up here. And I go up with this form. A lot of times you can come up with great forms if you just think about it and take a good form that you like and just move everything up a half step and see if you have to switch your fingers around in order to make it work, and you end up with another good movable form. E flat major 7th. Let's go to the B flat major 7th, pivoting off of this 5th string note now. Kind of like a B 7th, you just put your 2nd finger down. Last one based off of the 6th string, low F, and again I'm muting that 5th string. Next ones I want to talk to you about are minor 11th chords. Now we start out with the open forms. Start out with an F sharp minor 11th. Oh my goodness, I'll never play an F sharp minor 11th, I'm sure you're thinking. I play F sharp minor 11ths all the time. Anytime you're in the key of E or A, you can throw in that F sharp minor 11th and you're going to sound hip. Okay? Again, muting that 5th string. F sharp minor 11th. 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And I guess you could play it like that, but I don't really play it like that very much, because you're coming from an E usually. Next one is a B minor 11th. And again, I use 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. This would be good for anything in, let's say, A. I got them both in there. Okay, I just went through 4 chords there. A2, B minor 11th, F sharp minor 11th, and back to E. Now, for the movable minor 11th forms, take a look at the C minor 11th. Again, let's think about it. Think about what just happened here. If I take this B minor 11th and I shift everything up a half step, then those come up here, but I have to solve these open strings, so I got to reach my first finger way over there. And I get up with this really hip jazz-sounding chord. Next one is a 6-string version. What was our F sharp minor 11th? If I shift everything up a half step, I have to take care of my open strings. It's a little hard to get that full bar down to the 6th string, so usually I just do 5 strings. And that's our movable forms. Okay, we're going to talk about chord substitution now. These 2 concepts will revolutionize your chord playing. They will take you from being an average player, the guys that know the regular chords, to, man, what is that guy playing? His chords just sound so rich. Okay, here's just 2 little simple chord substitution tricks. First one is for major chords. To spice up any major chord, you can substitute a 2 chord. What do you mean by that? Well, if I'm playing a C, or the music has written in it C, I hardly ever play C these days. I always play a C2. So if the chord changes are like C and G, every other guitar player in the world is going to be going. That's not what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be doing C2, G2. Suddenly my sound sounds a whole lot more rich and full. It's because you can add that 2 on any major chord. If it's a major chord, I can substitute a 2 in. Well, does it have to be written in? No, I'm just substituting that. It may say C, D, and G, but I can do C2, D2, G2. See how rich that sounds as opposed to... That's for major chords. For minor chords, there's another rule. To spice up any minor chord, you can substitute a minor 11th chord. That's why I was teaching you all of these minor 11th chords. You think, gosh, I've never hardly ever seen a minor 11th chord written. Right, but as a guitar player, you will play them quite often. For any minor chord, this one works the major one works almost 100% of the time. The minor one works about 90% of the time. There's a couple of situations you're going to be in that a minor 11th will not work. But in most playing situations, if you substitute for a minor chord, the minor 11th, you're going to sound hip. Okay, so if I'm in B, and I have a B minor chord, I would play B minor 11th. If I want a G minor, I don't play G minor, I play a G minor 11th most times. Like if I'm in F. I'm adding these, see how suddenly my chords got very rich sounding. For major chords, I can substitute a 2 chord in. For minor chords, I can substitute the 11th in, for doing a minor 11th. Is that going to screw up the rest of the band? No. 9 times out of 10, it's not going to screw up anybody. It's just going to add some richness to your playing. Now, to get some practice on some of these chord substitutions, I didn't want to just give you another exercise. I'm kind of exercised out a little bit. You need to see how these are working in song situations. So the first one we're going to look at is acoustic groove. To get some practice with all this stuff, take a look at acoustic groove on page 70 of your book. Now, I'm going to have them put the whole song up for a minute. Let's take a look at the whole song. And let's just think about it. That first line, I have an E2, which is being substituted for a normal E chord, except I have it written in there. So that first line, in its basic form, would probably read E, F sharp minor, A, B suspended to B. But I've jazzed it up now. I'm doing an E2, an F sharp minor 11th, an A2, and then I go to my B suspended, my B. So let's take a look at that. In its basic form, the chord progression would sound like this. Pretty plain. Now, in the written version, I have substituted 2 chords in for the major chords and minor 11th chords in for the minor chord. So I end up with something like this. I could throw in a B2 there if I needed to, but it doesn't resolve quite as well, because what makes the suspended sound so good is the resolution from that 4 down to the 3. So I probably will just stick with the suspended there. Going to the major. See how that works? Now, I'm going to play it one time. Before we fire up the track, I'm going to work through it, and we're going to play it without the track. Let's start with line 1. E2, I'll give you a chance to find it. 1, 2, ready, go. F sharp minor 11th. A2. B sus. Do it again. Let me just talk to you for a second. Let me kind of explain some things, what's going on. If I want a hip-sounding progression, look at what's going on my last 2 strings, my open B and my open E. E2, they're both ringing. Look at F sharp minor 11th. They're still ringing. What about the A2? Still ringing. If I wanted to keep this up, I could do a B suspended like this, which is a different form of doing a B suspended, and then eventually resolve to the B, because there's no other way I could do it. But look, I kept that B and an E ringing through almost the entire 4 bars. See how that works? That's a little trick. You want to have a guitar part that sounds consistent and sounds like, oh, all the chords just fit together. That's a little secret to it. That's what pros do. You try and tie these little notes in between chords. So I could play the same progression, jumping all over the place. And using all kinds of weird forms, but it doesn't connect. But when I do it down here, I have these open strings and they're connecting. Okay, here's how the second line would be. B minor 11th. A major 7th, D major 7th, third line, E sus, F sharp minor 11th, E sus. See how that works? Now let's go ahead and play it with the track. Here we go, line 1. Repeat that. B minor 11th and A major 7th. Now back up to the top. This time I'm going to kind of finger style it a little bit. I'm still kind of accenting those. See how it all sounds connected and very rich sound. That gives you a good workout on those two chords in the minor 11ths. Okay, to give us some more practice with these two chords in minor 11ths, take a look at the song right before that one in your book, page 70, Suspended Smooth. Now let's work on through this. Let's take a look at that first line. I've got a D suspended to a D. That's no problem there. A suspended to an A. That's no problem. D suspended to a D. And here's my first G2. If I look at that second line, it's pretty much the same. Then A sus, A. B minor, got to do a bar chord there, A. Here comes that G2 again. That one would repeat. Let's go down to that third line, though. Now I have a B flat major 7th, a C2, and a D2. Then it just holds on for an extra 2 beats in there in that fourth measure. And now fourth line, B flat major 7th, then C2. Give you a chance to catch up here. E minor 7th, then an A2, and then the whole thing would repeat. So that first rhythm, okay, let's play it together. Go back to line 1. Let's play it together. We won't have the track just yet. We'll just kind of play it together. Nice and slow. 1 and 2 and ready, D sus. 3, 4, A sus, back to D sus, to a G2, then the next line, A sus, B minor, A, G2. Okay, now let's fire it up with the track and play it together. Let me throw on a little delay here, maybe a little chorus. That'll sound good. All right, here we go. 3, 4. Second line. That barred B minor. Back up the top again, line 1. Now here comes that B flat major 7th, C2, D2. Maybe I can arpeggiate that if I want to, C2. E minor 7th here. Okay, now I'm going to arpeggiate a little bit. I'm going to get a little looser with it. I can kind of arpeggiate this G2 a little bit. Here comes that B flat major 7th. I'm just arpeggiating these chords. Down to C. G2. Okay, these chords that we've learned this session are going to boost your chord playing and take it to the next level. Work at it, get them underneath your fingers, but they will transform your playing and give it a richness in your sound that the guy next to you playing guitar is not going to have. And it's not just because you're doing a couple of key things. You know a few 2 chords, you're substituting those in for major chords. You know a few minor 11th chords, movable, open ones. I substitute those in for minor chords. Even got a few major 7ths I can throw in there if I need to. Those chords will broaden your chord base and your sound. That's what will make your sound different from the same guy playing the same chords next to you. So keep up the great work, and I'll see you next time. Here are some tips for learning this material that we've covered here in session 12. There's 2 of them I want to give you. First of all, goes without saying, get familiar with the chord forms. Get them underneath your fingers. You're going to have to know at a moment's notice that this is a C2. This is a G2, D2, the movable ones, where you can rip these off by memory. So you got to get familiar with these chord forms. Get them underneath your fingers so that your fingers can do the physical aspects of playing them. Jump them around in different places. Practice how they move. Second thing, work out the 2 chord substitution tricks I gave you, the one for major, the one for minor. Practice looking at a piece of music, taking anything, looking at it and taking the chords in it and adding 2 chords every time you see a major chord, adding minor 11th chords every time you see a minor chord. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to be real creative with it. Just look. If it's a major chord, throw in a 2 chord. If it's a minor chord, throw in a minor 11th chord. Slap it together and see what it sounds like. That's going to be your 2 biggest keys to learning this material. Keep up the great work. For this session, you're ready to move on when you can play all of the new chord forms and you've also memorized them. You're ready to move on when you can play all of the 2 chord, major 7th chord, and minor 11th chord exercises in your book and in the bonus resources at about 80 beats per minute, which is a good medium tempo. When you can do these things, then you're ready to move on to the next session where we'll be covering playing the blues. I'll see you there.